far we've been looking at the full cross stitch, and now I want to take a look at the part stitch. We're going to use a larger size Ada to look at this because it is rather detailed. When you're working a full cross stitch, you're actually working 2 arms of a cross. And if we stop the process after just 1 arm, there we have a half cross stitch. You can actually work it sloping that way or the other way. It really doesn't matter. The only important thing to remember is if you're filling a large area with this stitch, to keep all the diagonals lying one way or the other way. We've used the half cross stitch in this design here called Footy Mad from the Bee Bunny series, and it's used to give a slightly lighter effect here for the crowd scene. Sometimes in our kit a blend of colours is used. On Jolly Robin's breast, 2 colours are blended together to soften the contrast.
In this case, you will see a symbol on your chart that does not appear on your thread card.
If you look at your chart and at your instructions, it will explain which 2 colours you're going to use for your blend. To work our blends, as shown by B on the stitch diagram, we need to use 1 strand of red and 1 of rust. So let's get 1 strand of red and 1 of rust. We simply pop them together and thread them through the eye of the needle. Now in this case we have to use a slightly different way of starting off, because if we doubled it over like in our loop method, we'd be stitching with 4 strands, which obviously isn't what we want. So what we have to do is anchor it on the back of our design. I have here the Jolly Robin design, and I've worked a section already in red, as shown by the highlighted areas on the stitch diagram. If we turn over to the back of the piece, we can simply run our blend through the back of some of these stitches. You'd use a similar technique to anchor any work you were doing if you are only going to be wanting to use 1 or 3 strands of thread. Sometimes you may come across this strange looking symbol on your stitch diagram, where the square has been divided by a diagonal line.
This represents a fractional stitch and is used to add details such as these turtles' eyes or these cats' noses.
Let's look at it in more detail on this design called Ducks and Daffs. Here we have a section of the chart where you can see the open square symbol represents dark grey for the duck's eyes. And I've worked this section of the design here. So we have the dark grey area made up of 2 full cross stitches, and then at the top a 3/4 stitch, 3/4 stitch, and again the same 2 3/4 stitches at the bottom. Let's look at how to work this. Here we have our half cross stitch already in place. So to make it 3/4, we need to add another 1/4. Simply come up from one of the other corners, and we're going to take the needle and thread over that half cross stitch and pierce the centre of the Ada block. This would make a 1/4 stitch over it. It helps to keep the needle absolutely vertical as you go through the Ada block, and to make sure you have a nice sharp needle in the first place. For the points of the eyes, there was a 3/4 stitch worked that way, and similarly 1 worked the other way. So we work our half cross stitch diagonal sloping in the opposite direction, come up from the corner, and again work a tiny 1/4 stitch over our half cross stitch. Here I've worked a set of 4 3/4 stitches to form this diamond pattern. Now the only remaining question is what to do with the other part of the Ada block here. On a smaller count Ada, like the 14 and 16 normally used in the Bothy Threads kit, this will be a tiny area and it could just be left unworked. The alternatives are to fill in these other corners in some way. If you're using something like an eye here and the surrounding area is a lighter colour, then the easiest thing to do is just to work tiny quarter stitches in the remaining parts, as shown by the red here. The alternative, especially if you have two strong colours like here, is to work another 3/4 stitch in the corner. I'll just show you how to do that. So on our first one, let's just add a 1/4 stitch. So we come up in the remaining free hole here and simply again go back down vertically through that Ada block, but this time we're not going over that first original half cross stitch. So that's the first technique for you. The second technique is to actually work a whole new 3/4 stitch in the same block. So again, we start off in a half cross stitch and we work a 1/4 stitch over it. And this time, exactly like we did originally, we're going to work over that first arm of the cross.
So, we hope that you now feel confident
And happy to start your next cross stitch project.
Happy stitching!
If you have any questions, please get in touch. You can give us a ring or send us an email. We also have a very friendly Facebook group where you can share your stitching stories.